heavyweight champion has long been regarded as the baddest man on the planet, both inside the UFC and in the boxing community. In the UFC heavyweight division, only Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier have held the title since 2016. Even while they might be able to lay claim to being the world's most badass man, one man contests this. Francis Ngannou has a good chance of maintaining his status as the most dangerous guy on the earth in the years to come, even though he hasn't yet taken home the heavyweight belt. Ngannou was unquestionably the most powerful puncher the UFC has ever seen, and his entry into the promotion was akin to a bomb ready to go off. This is the story of Francis the Predator Ngannou. For a professional MMA fighter, Ngannou started training at a very late age, but his success is no surprise when looking at his background. Born and raised in Badi, Cameroon, Ngannou grew up in very poor conditions. With very little formal education, Ngannou started work at the age of 12. The area of Cameroon that he was born in was known for its sand quarries, and this is where he worked to help support his family. On top of doing physical labor from a young age, Francis' father was a well-known street fighter in the area, and he used this as motivation. Avoiding routes that would lead to joining gangs, Francis vowed to do something positive with his life and started training in boxing at the age of 22. After helping to support his family by taking any jobs available, Ngannou decided to move to France at the age of 26 to try and pursue his boxing dream. Though his dream was held back by 2 months in jail after he illegally crossed the border in Spain, Ngannou finally made his way to Paris with no money and no one there that he knew. After walking around on the streets trying to find a boxing gym, he found one that let him in and gave him $50 to buy some basic training clothes. Though boxing was his first love, the guys at the gym convinced him to try MMA since it would be easier for him to make money. Since the gym was closed on weekends, Ngannou would normally spend his remaining time at any available homeless shelters. Soon enough, he found another gym where he would meet his longtime head coach, Fernand Lopes. Also originally from Cameroon, Lopes took one look at the genetic force standing in front of him and welcomed him into the gym, giving him a place to stay as well as a bag of training gear. Armed with a desire to do something positive with his life and help his family back in, as well as his size, power, and years spent doing intense manual labor, Ngannou started to pursue a career in MMA. He debuted in November of 2013, having his first 4 fights in the French promotion 100% Fight. Though he lost his second fight via decision, Ngannou's 3 other fights in France showed how quickly he was taking to the sport, winning one with a knockout and the other 2 via submission. With 2 more wins added to his record, Ngannou was signed to the UFC and made his debut on December 19 in 2015. With a second-round knockout of fellow UFC debutant Luis Enrique, Ngannou announced his arrival in the UFC. In his second fight, Francis came up against another heavyweight hopeful in Curtis Blaydes, who would go on his own heavyweight run, despite losing to Ngannou via second-round doctor stoppage. With his 3rd stoppage in a row against Bojan Mihailovic in July of 2016, Ngannou's 4th performance would see another consecutive finish that saw him starting to gain some serious attention. In the co-main event of a fight night in Albany, New York, Ngannou pulled off an incredible Kimura submission, demonstrating his brute strength and submission skills to finish Anthony Hamilton in the first round. With such an impressive showing in quick fashion, Ngannou got another fight just 2 months later in January of 2017 in what would prove to be his breakthrough year. With a big name finally standing across the octagon from him, Ngannou blitzed right past former champion Andrei Arlovski, stopping him in a minute and a half with another glimpse of his superhuman power. With 5 UFC wins all ending in a finish, the UFC was ready to give the Predator a huge step up in competition. Realizing his clear potential, Ngannou was scheduled to face another former champion in Junior Dos Santos at UFC 215. Unfortunately, the fight fell through the first time around. Instead, Ngannou would have to wait until December for his next fight, but the time spent waiting was more than worth it for the payoff. Coming up against a legend of the sport, it's a huge understatement to say that Alistair Overeem was a step up in competition for Ngannou. Despite the massive jump, Francis rose to the occasion and produced his best performance yet at UFC 218. After a tense opening to the fight, Ngannou landed what can only be described as a Mike Tyson punch-out style uppercut, snapping Overeem's head completely back and knocking him out cold just 1 minute and 42 seconds into the first round. Ngannou produced one of the most iconic and brutal knockouts to ever take place in the octagon. Ngannou was put straight into a title fight the following January, taking on Stipe Miocic, who had already tied the record for most consecutive heavyweight title defenses. With Ngannou receiving the full force of the UFC hype machine after his knockout of Overeem, the champion felt disrespected. This showed in the build-up and in the fight, with Miocic feeling like he was expected to lose. Despite taking some huge punches that would have left most men drooling on the canvas, Miocic weathered a storm and used his fight IQ to expose the chinks in Ngannou's armor. With his wrestling ability and cardio untested, Miocic's toughness allowed him to close the distance and drive the challenger into the later rounds, grinding out a unanimous and dominant decision victory. After a significant halt to Ngannou's momentum, the next fight of his career would be an incredibly strange blip. Matched up with the UFC's leader in most knockouts, Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis was sold as an all-action firefight between two of the sport's most dangerous gunslingers. With Lewis battling through injuries and Ngannou hesitant to engage after his skill set was exposed against Miocic, the fight became a stalemate and one of the most disappointing fights in recent history. In November of 2018, Ngannou returned to the octagon, ready to end the year on a high and put his last two fights behind him. In a rematch with Curtis Blaydes, his former foe had racked up 5 wins with 1 no contest since their first meeting. As soon as Blaydes attempted to close the distance and implement his wrestling offense, he was faced with the power of Ngannou and was stopped in the first 45 seconds of the fight. In a 3-month turnaround, Ngannou started his 2019 off with an even faster knockout over a former champion. Once considered the best heavyweight on the planet, Cain Velasquez's comeback was cut short after an injury and some bombs, courtesy of Ngannou. On the same card that Ngannou had fought Lewis, light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier had beaten Stipe Miocic for his title, leaving them set for a huge rematch. While Derek Lewis would get a short-notice title shot against Cormier at UFC 230, a heavyweight title picture was dictated by Miocic and Cormier as they began a trilogy of fights that would play out over the course of 2 years. With Cormier and Miocic battling out for the belt, Ngannou was left with no other option if he wanted to stay busy instead of waiting for his shot. In June of 2019, 2 months before the rematch between DC and Stipe, Ngannou solidified his status as the third man in the title picture, finally settling the score with Junior Dos Santos after their canceled fight from 2017. Ngannou once again made short work of his opponent as he embarked on his second reign of terror in the division, stopping JDS in 1 minute and 11 seconds. Ngannou was still left frozen out of the title picture, as with Miocic winning his belt back, a trilogy fight was bound to happen. Once again, Ngannou looked to prove himself as the one and only contender once it became clear that he wasn't next in line for the title. After the COVID-19 pandemic had stopped all sport from happening in early 2020, the UFC resumed with UFC 249 at the end of March. With most other major sports yet to find a way to continue through the pandemic, all eyes were on the UFC, and once again, Francis rose to the occasion. Matched with the newest wrecking machine to make a statement in the division, Ngannou once again defended his place as the division's most dangerous man. Stopping Jairzinho Rosen's strike with a vicious volley of punches, Ngannou reminded Dana White, the fans, and the rest of the division just what was waiting for the winner of the third bout between Cormier and Miocic. With Miocic emerging out of the trilogy as the victor after getting revenge on Daniel Cormier in his last 2 meetings, talks immediately began to circulate about when Francis would finally get his second shot at the title. After he had waited so long for it and dispatched every contender put in front of him in emphatic fashion, the fight was finally announced on January 17th. Francis Ngannou will once again challenge Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title at UFC 260 on March 27th. After his work for his charity, the Francis Ngannou Foundation, which helps to provide sports facilities for young people in Cameroon, bringing the world title back to his birthplace will be the perfect bookend to Ngannou's incredible journey.